You are attending Mission Not So Impossible, Valuing Your Mission, the first of the Check and Connect series for agency leadership and community employment management. My name is Maya Cox, and I'm a program coordinator with the Center on Community Living and Careers. During today's webinar, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box located on the top right-hand side of your screen. These questions will be addressed at the end of today's session. If anyone has any connectivity problems, you can also use this chat box to alert us. Items for download, which is today's presentation in PDF form, is located right below the chat box. Okay, I'm hearing that sound is fading in and out. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, it's because my head was turned just slightly. Okay. All right, guys, so at this time, I'd like to introduce Patricia Oser and Kelly Mitchell. Patricia serves as Vice President of Community Operations for Southern Indiana Resource Solutions, Inc., otherwise known as SIRS, and has over 39 years of experience working with individuals with disabilities. She has served in a variety of roles that include development and implementation of programs, management of overall operations, advocacy for individuals with disabilities, quality assurance and quality improvement, and development of relationships with key community partners. She was also instrumental in the SIRS conversion to integrated community-based services from the mid-90s through 2003. We also have Kelly Mitchell, who is currently serving as the CEO and President of SIRS. She also has quite a bit of experience, 30 years, working with individuals with intellectual disabilities, and she also has had a number of roles, including direct service, adult day living instructor, case manager, director of services, HR director, and of course now CEO. She has a BS in social sciences, an MBA, and her PhD. She's also a presenter at the National Organization Change Forum in 2010 and at the ABSNY Regional Institute on Employment First in 2015. So we are very appreciative of both of them coming today to us to share their expertise and to give us some insight into how SIRS valued their mission and changed services based on their mission. So Patty and Kelly, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Maya. It's our pleasure to be with you all this afternoon and share our experiences and our journey to community employment. We're going to talk about our journey, the successes and struggles along the way in implementing our vision and mission. I'd also just like to let you know that this is the first time that we have presented in this format, and it may be a little awkward for us, so my apologies in advance if there are some lags as we move through this process. With not seeing the audience, there may be times that I get a bit uncomfortable, and if you hear that in my voice, I hope that I don't lose you in the presentation.
This is Patty. I just want to say good afternoon, and I'm really, really glad to be here.
Every company, whether you're a nonprofit or for-profit, a corporation, sole proprietorship, must have a strong mission and vision that clearly guides your decision-making and your service and product delivery. Your vision must serve as your North Star, and it's that marker on which you have to keep your eye as you're moving forward in serving your customers. A company without a clear, strong vision is a rudderless boat adrift at sea, and you're really going to be looking for any place to land. A company with a strong vision and mission will have a clear and intended destination, and everything along your journey must be weighed as to its value in getting to that desired state. For me, this is particularly important for a service delivery organization. Your mission and vision has to be strongly focused on your customer, and it's not about driving your organization to be number one. So there has to be a lot of time spent on the development of this vision and mission. The vision and mission must be owned and driven from leadership. There has to exist a captain, if you will, of the ship who continues to guide the crew toward the North Star. As senior leaders, each of you must be able to see beyond your current situation and envision your ideal state, your vision. Part of that responsibility is garnering your internal and external synergy surrounding that vision. You're going to have to explore best practices and identify and bring on board both internal and external supporters. A good captain isn't going to get very far without a crew, and it must be a strong crew. And you're going to have to be aware of the waters that you're going to be sailing in. So find outside sources that can help you calm the waters. I'm going to let Patty talk a little bit about our particular journey that started back in the 80s as we really explored vision and mission.
Yes, I think for us, the top-down, the captain, so to speak, and the synergy came from our CEO. He was a person who could see that broader picture, who could see that vision when no one else around him could see it. He began exploring the idea of real community inclusion for people with disabilities in the late 1980s. And he would come around and talk with folks about that vision. And of course, him being as so much further ahead than the rest of us, we kind of looked at him rather strangely, like, what are you talking about? But he persisted, and he continued to come and talk to us, and he began to explore, best practices and to become involved with people outside the organization, the external advocates. He began developing the internal cheerleaders within the organization, the people who would actually sit and say, well, maybe John, tell me a little more about that, or that sounds like a really good idea. Let's talk about it some more. So he began doing those kinds of things, and he began educating senior management and also began educating our board of directors. John saw that was an important part of the journey we were about to begin, is to educate our board of directors and bring them on board for the future visioning and planning that we were about to hopefully undertake. There was a lot of focuses at this time on board development and getting directors in place that would challenge the status quo. One particular board member at this time was a person with a disability. He was an advocate for people with disabilities. He was not a person we served, but he was instrumental in that external advocacy for us, to being that person who would challenge the status quo thinking. And I believe he very much was somebody who helped move us forward. And without him, I don't know if we would have moved quite as well as we did. John made the strategic decision to involve the board of directors and bring them on board because it was a critical part of what we needed to do.
In pursuing a strong and genuine vision and mission, the role of governance cannot be overstated. I think, as Patty said, it was crucial for us to have a board that looked long range, that could be visionary, that was focused more on the future rather than on daily operations, that could remove itself from the day-to-day operations and the struggles that we were having in service delivery and wrapping our heads around how we got to this thing that isn't yet defined. How do we get there? One of the things that we have done is we use a hybrid model, if you will, of John Carver's model of board governance. We don't fully implement it, but we do use a piece that focuses on ends determination. This was crucial for us. The board spent months and months and months talking about the vision of our organization, what our mission should be, and when we were doing everything right, what should our world look like? And that is what an end is. What is the difference that we are to be making in our communities, but what is the difference that we're to be making in the lives of the people that we're serving? Why are we here? And the largest focus is who or whom. Who are we to be serving? Who is our real customer? There was a lot of confusion. I joined this organization back in 1987, and I can remember we talked about all our customers and our constituents and stakeholders, and it was the community leaders and the county council because they funded us, and it was the family, and it was this organization over there, and it was our funding source. We were so diluted in who we were trying to please that we really lost focus on who we should be directing our services toward and what our mission was really about. I cannot stress enough the amount of time that should be spent on establishing the ends. The board, your governance, whether it's if you own your business, if you're privately owned, you are governance. You have to determine what ends or what outcomes should you be achieving. What should you be seeing happen if you are truly delivering on your vision and your mission? I have just shared on this next slide one example of one of our current ends statements. And the thing about ends is it's not just, oh, give me this pie in the sky, what's everything supposed to look like, what's your outcome. It's also for governance to say how much of your resource should be focused on this particular end. So our board sat just a few years ago and explored again our ends, and they said 80% of what we're doing, whether that's time, money, staffing, research, should be spent on supporting independence for individuals with disabilities. That is the end. That's that broad outcome. That's the focus of our organization. But within that, then we have specific areas of focus. And you can see for us a number one priority beneath that is to encourage and support competitive employment at competitive wages for individuals with disabilities. And you see that we have that in a parenthetical. It's a high priority. That says to me as the CEO that I have been challenged to place my efforts and deliver on encouraging and supporting and competitive employment for the people that we serve. It's a very clear dictate to me, and I am evaluated. There are measurements that go along with these, and I haven't shared all of those. But there are measurements on which I am evaluated as to whether this organization is delivering on that end. And you can see we're also looking at supporting community access for individuals with disabilities as a high priority. When we first started with ends, I want to talk about an evolution. You're never perfect, and we still have a way to go. These are going to get better as we proceed with this process, but I go back 10, 15 years ago, we had 5 or 6 end statements. It was something about maximizing community resources and providing therapy services. It was very service-focused versus outcome-oriented and establishing, for me, the parameter within to work. The board, our governance, was still trying to be far too prescriptive. So again, I don't want to beat the dead horse, but I encourage you to explore models, whether it's the Carver model, whether it's another outcomes management methodology, so that your board can clearly define and prioritize your efforts.
I think to add to that, at this point in time, in our journey anyway, in establishing these end statements, the board used our vision to establish these end statements. That is what drove them in establishing these statements.
And before we move off of this, I want to talk about this process of establishing ends. What I love about it is the focus is on identifying your real customer. And what it did for us was drive us to person-centeredness. And Patty's going to talk a little bit more about that later. We're not going to devolve into that at this moment. But I want you to keep that in mind, that this process led us to determining that our focus, we had to be person-centered, that had to help us drive and value our mission.
So with the ends established and the board somewhat on board, you know, and building that synergy within the board and also within the staff, um, we begin the journey feeling somewhat overwhelmed and somewhat going, can we do this? We had to challenge ourselves and we had to challenge others, and during this time, um, we had to challenge a lot of thinking. We had to challenge our current systems, our policies, and our procedures, our ideologies. We really, it was a time of a lot of questioning. And so we began in that process. Um, and we had to say, well, what do we have to take along on this journey? We began looking at best practices. We had to take the right people with us. We had to take the right tools, and we had to have the right resources. So we started looking at those kinds of things. And when we started looking at the people we wanted to take with us, some of our staff were on board with us, others weren't. Some of our parents and guardians were on board with us, and some weren't. And some of our clients really didn't understand what we were doing, and they, you know, they were just, you know, sort of there waiting for us to tell them what to do, just like always. And it was during this time, as Kelly already has said, that we began looking more at person-centeredness, because what we had done up to this time was pretty much, this is what we have to offer you. And it was at this time when we further defined who we were serving and put that more in the forefront of our thinking, we began the person-centered process. We committed days and days of training to this that every person that worked here had to participate in. And during this period of time, we began to see people have some aha moments. That's what we like to think of them as. I had several of them. And I think different people had their aha moments at different times, but that's part of the journey is you know, different people get on the ship at different ports. So, you know, at this point in time, we had a few people on board, and then we had those people who said, I'm not getting on board. I'm not getting on that ship. Um, and one of the things that we heard was, well, what I'm doing now isn't that, I mean, we're doing good stuff here with our clients. Isn't that good enough? What about all the things I've done in the past? Isn't that worth any value? And so you had to work with people to say, yes, what you've been doing is a value, but it's a part of the journey. It's a step in the process to some place that has more opportunity for the people that we serve. And so it was having those conversations with folks, with staff, with parents, with clients. I know for me, one of my aha moments was when I was in my office one day and I'm sitting there thinking about how we were writing people's plans. And the thing that just hit me like a ton of bricks was, I am writing these plans that are focusing on everything these clients cannot do. That's what we did. We evaluated people. We looked at the things they couldn't quite do and they needed more independence in. So we'd write that into their plan, and we would train them, you know, to become better at tying their shoes, or better at productivity, or whatever it was that was in their plan. And I just had this moment one day thinking, if I had to come to work every day and work on things I was not good at, I think it would drive me insane. And I continued to think that way. And of course, after we did some person-centered planning and began to understand that whole process more, it just became much, much more clear to me. And then, of course, there was the, you know, other people that would say to us, well, this can't happen. We've spent a lot of time building this agency into what it is, and you can't tear it down. And it was trying to get people to understand that we weren't trying to tear anything down. We were just trying to evolve it to the next stage, to the next step. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. It would have been very, very, very easy to get derailed at this point in our journey, because we had to get enough people on board to say, hey, yeah, we are actually taking this journey. So
I would like to share here too, as far as an aha moment, and talking about a mission and a vision where individuals with disabilities are fully working in their communities, living in their communities, and having all of the opportunities that each of us enjoy. You know, I have my own moments, and I think we all do this, and sometimes I still fight this today. I want you to understand ours is a journey and was a journey of conversion, but this doesn't necessarily have to apply to conversion. Whether you did, or don't have sheltered work is really not what this presentation is about. It's about how to put your mission into action. And the reason I say that is at the time we decided to go full on trying to figure out how to put people in the community, I've been around long enough that my first thing was we have 180 people in sheltered work. And how in the world? There aren't enough jobs out there in the community, and we're not going to find enough jobs, and they're not available, and what are we going to do with this? And 180 people. I finally had to come to the realization, and I had this aha moment, that those 180 people didn't all arrive on our doorstep at the same time on the same day. This had been a process over many, many, many years. And there was a time in history that some of these people were told they would never work anywhere, whether it was in sheltered work or in the community. They were told that they would live out their life in an institution. So someone had to see beyond that box back then. And so why was I letting myself be constrained by this sheltered work model? And was I closing doors by institutional biases and legacy biases and my own thinking about what an individual with a disability can and should be doing? And I still fight that today. You'll hear that, well, there just aren't enough jobs out there, and employers, they have attitudes, and they're not going to hire people with disabilities. And you know what? It's true. There are times there are struggles, and not every person is as easy to place as another. But isn't that true of all people, whether they have a disability or not? I know individuals that don't have a disability that aren't out there working, or they don't find the right job, or they can't find the match that fits for them. So I think for each of us, it's a personal struggle, and we always have had to return back to, let's be person-centered, let's look at our mission, and let's not stop the movement forward because of the fear of a few people who might be a bit more challenging to find a placement for. But that doesn't mean it's their issue, it's our issue. How do we figure out how to make it work? So once we had these aha moments, and we started to get a little bit of internal momentum and started to get our feet beneath us, we had to put some action into place. And I think most of you are familiar with the process or the idea of strategic planning, and it's not my intent to teach you necessarily about strategic planning. But if you truly want to put your mission at the heart of your actions, you've got to find a process that works for you, that forces you to peel back, and I want to stress, peel back the layers one by one. You have to keep uncovering the obstacles to achieving your vision and your mission. I shared a process that we started back in 2001, and that's what you're seeing up on your screen. So this is the actual outcome of these meetings. And we were blessed at the time. Our former Lieutenant Governor, Sue Ellspermann, and the current president of Ivy Tech, we brought her in as an outside consultant to keep us focused, because we were really grappling as to how to move forward with this mission. And I think we kept coming up with the old cookie cutter stuff. CSRS will be the #1 provider of services. We need to find, more funding. We need to serve more people. But we just really weren't getting real about what was stopping us. And what I loved about this process, if you look on the right side of your screen, is that we took the vision statement and we winnowed that down and came up with this vision. And by the way, that's not our vision today. That has been modified slightly. And then we took our mission statement and then we developed goals from that. But in the process, as we were looking at that vision and the mission, and we looked at them in tandem, we kept asking, or Sue kept asking us, our facilitator kept asking us, what's stopping you? And if we got just to the top layer, if we were just on the epidermis of the skin, she said, well, no, but what's really stopping you? What's really stopping you? This process took us days and days and days. And I want to say you have to dedicate the time and energy to this. You're not going to set aside 4 hours and do real planning to move you off center. So just in this section, these are a handful of goals that we came up with. And we decided that the biggest thing is there weren't a lot of opportunities for inclusion within the community, that was stopping us. And as a buffer to that, we always ask, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? Why do I want to create more opportunities for inclusion in the community? Does that drive me right back to the mission? Why do I want to remain financially sound? What's the purpose of that? And if you would, slip to the next slide there. So let's just take one of these goals, and you have to put the mission into strategies. The goals are broad, and sometimes people look at goals and it's like, oh, that's all lovely and ethereal, and isn't that wonderful? Everybody wants more opportunities for inclusion in the community. Then we had to get a little more real. Well, what's stopping us? What's stopping us from creating more opportunities for inclusion in the community? So, well, we're not really good about using adaptive technology. Well, the community's not really aware of the benefits of inclusion. Funding. We didn't have the money to be able to do some of the things that we wanted to do. Our funders weren't necessarily reimbursing us to do those things. But we had to get real about the fact that if this was going to happen, we had to figure out a way to get the money to do it. So was it redirect current resources? Is it raise more money? But we had to get real. We were talking earlier about the ends, and we're talking about the vision and the mission. Those ends and these strategic goals can't be driven by finance, not if you're going to be person-centered. Our decision to convert from sheltered, segregated services to community services was not one of financial improvement. In fact, it was the exact opposite. We shut down sheltered workshops that generated over $100,000 per year to our bottom line. And I won't be untruthful. We had some years of not necessarily teetering on the brink of financial disaster, but we were in financial decline as we figured this out, as to find the funding. But we knew if we would be totally committed to this vision and mission that we had to move in that direction, and that we couldn't let the current parameters of funding and service delivery drive us. That we had to separate ourselves from that, and we had to focus on the people that we were serving. So again, this is an example. It's not telling you that you have to do it, but you have to trust a process. And I can't stress enough the benefit of having an outside resource, an outside facilitator that will continue to drive you, that can remove themselves emotionally from this process, because each of us in our own way are tied. I was tied to what we were doing. This is how I've always done it. What do you mean we're going to do it differently? And there were times that I had difficulty seeing beyond that. And I can remember several of our outside facilitators just really in a one-on-one with me asking, how do you really get there? What's stopping you from doing that? Let's move to our next slide.
Okay, at this point in our journey, the first point I think we want to make is that everybody's journey is unique. There is no cookie cutter way to get to where we could get to. It's unique for everyone. Don't expect anybody to come and tell you how to do it. It doesn't exist. Yeah, and if they do run, because they really don't know what they're talking about, because everybody's journey is going to be unique. So we've talked about, how we set our mission and our vision, and some of the strategic planning, and some of the, the garnering of support and the building of the synergy for this. At this point in time, then, it's a matter of putting all of that into action, and that's where we were at this point in time. It was time to say, well, where are we going to redirect our resources? Are we going to redirect our resources? If we're using resources for something now, should they be used for something different that will better meet our mission? We continue to utilize outside consultants. It was about this point in time that we became involved in the Indiana Employment Initiative through the center. And we had some fantastic consultants, technical assistants from the center that really helped us during this period. I think without being involved in that Indiana Employment Initiative project, again, this could have been a place where we could have gotten derailed, because we had those outside consultants continuing to keep us focused on our vision, on our mission, on how to get it done. Because now we're in the action stage, the stage of saying, how are we going to make this happen? And I'm telling you, it's not a clear message all the time. So you have to have those outside people that are going to keep you focused. It was this point in time we began to invest in training. We did, as I said earlier, began doing person-centered planning training for all of our staff. That was a critical time for us, because it really helped keep us focused on our mission. Every time you sat down with a client and you asked them what their dreams were, and you ask them, what do you think you're good at? Who do you want to spend time with? And you got answers that just surprised you. You went, wow, I've worked with this client for 20 years, and I've just learned something new about them because I'm doing person-centered planning with them. And it was a marvelous time, really, to get to know our clients better than what we'd known them, and some of them we'd known for 15 or 20 years already. And so that process continued to drive us. We began to look at building teams. What you see up there on the screen is the change management team to build support. We knew that if we were going to stay on this journey, and if we were going to stay focused, we had to have an internal group of people that could keep us focused, that could keep us on that journey, that could keep us in the action planning, and keeping us moving forward. So internally, we formed what was called the change management team. And that change management team operated for, oh my goodness, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years. And it became our living, breathing group of people that said, hey, we're in this to stay. And we had some really strong periods of debate, and some strong times when it was like, is this really what we want to do? And why do we want to do it? And we always had to bring it back to our vision and to our mission, and keep us on board. But it was a time where we would debate. We would bring up differences of opinion. It's at this time where we were building that convergence toward, hey, we are not turning around on this journey. We are taking it. And during this phase, a lot of that happened. And it only happened through open, honest conversation, a lot of debate. It was painful at times. It was hard work. But, somehow we all found the energy to keep going. And I attribute that to the people who were on that team. I attribute that to the outside consultants we used, and just to the commitment that our agency and our board had made to this.
Yeah, I just want to stress there that last bullet point, that change management team. You must have no less than an individual, but it needs to be a group of individuals that own your mission and vision and your strategies. A lot of companies develop strategic plans, and then they put them in a binder or now an electronic folder, and they sit on a shelf somewhere. The purpose of strategic planning is not the process. The purpose is to put it into action. So you must have, whatever you determine the name of your group is, you must have your own internal change management team, your own conversion team, your own strategic team, whatever title you choose to give it, to move you always forward towards your mission and vision. And I referenced earlier that your vision, your mission is your North Star. And for me, that is such a very vivid picture. Another one of our consultants actually gave that to me 20 years ago, Connie Farrell. And it has always guided me in whatever my role is within this organization, but particularly now as the CEO and the president. I liken it to an individual on the journey, adrift at sea, and at night I see that North Star to guide me, and I constantly have to check my course against that North Star. That's my constant, that's my guide, and no matter how far away that star is, I have to keep moving along that way. And yes, my routes may vary, and I may drift a little bit off course, but I never lose my focus. And once we had this change management team in place, and we really had some internal synergy, and we had plans. We had real plans. We had put the wheels on the ground. It wasn't just all this talk. It was concrete now. How are you going to get there? Everything that came up operationally, everything that came up, staffing decisions, training decisions, it was, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Is this moving us toward our vision and mission? Should we still be doing this? We had a lot of that. I'm going to tell you, we have let go of services and programs, and we have opted out of certain areas that we were once strongly held in, and we've also passed up opportunities because we have to evaluate. We have limited resources. How do we direct them, and who is our focus, and what is our end? So every decision is weighed, whether it's a specific individual with a client, and when someone comes to me and says, so-and-so wants us to do this, but we really don't have the budget to do it. I'm proud to say that the first thing that I do is ask, should we do it? I don't say, oh, do we have the money to do it? I try to look at it as, does this drive me toward the vision, and is this person-centered? And then we go about, how do we make it happen? The answer is, oh, no, we're not paid to do that. Well, that's not really in the service definition. We only get paid if we do it this way. It's, should we be doing it? And if we should be doing it and we can't do it right now, we're not doing it, how do we go about doing it? So I want to stress, we were having the conversation before we got started. It's not perfect. We're still not where we want to be. To this day, we still have 3 small group HAB day program services. And I would love that we weren't doing that. And for me, this was one of those aha moments. I looked to an outside consultant several years ago, Gary May, that Patty referred to earlier in the session, and I called him as an individual with a disability, as a very strong community advocate for the rights of individuals with disabilities, and asked him what his thoughts were about CSRS continuing to provide this day program service. Did he feel that we were sending a mixed message, that we weren't about community inclusion, and were we getting derailed? And the first words out of his mouth were, no, CSRS is totally bitten off the inclusion sausage. That was his phrasing. He said, there's no doubt in what you do that you're headed in that direction. He said, Kelly, you just need to understand that, offering that day program is currently pulling some of your resources, and you have to make certain that it doesn't pull too much from your intended end, from your vision. But there's no reason that has to totally derail your journey. So even though you're not where you want to be right now, does not mean you can't get there. Don't give up. Continue to identify what's stopping you. Address the barriers and tackle them one at a time. It's like climbing the mountain. And put action plans into place beyond your strategic plan. Oh my, we had a task force for safety net and risk management for the people we serve. We had a task force for rehabilitation services. We had a task force on organizational structure, which we changed 20 years ago, and we've recently just changed it again. We're undergoing a huge organizational shift right now. So it's always fluid, but you have to have action plans, and you have to have individuals, committees that own this and that will drive it. Otherwise, it's going to get lost in the day-to-day. It's just too easy. Patty and I were talking before we got started. Every day I have a long list of things that need to be done and things that the state wants or that our families want or our employees want. If you don't put this at the top of your list, it'll get lost, and you'll get mucked in providing the service, and you'll lose sight of your vision and your mission.
So during this time, what was occurring in our agency is a philosophical change. We began to fundamentally think differently in terms of why we were here, who we were serving, and what it was we wanted the outcomes to be. During this time, we had a lot of mission and vision refinement. We just kept going back to that mission, and we just kept saying, is this really, the direction we went ahead? And each time we did that, we refined that mission just a little bit more. We had to send a clear message to the people around us, particularly our clients and our families, about what our mission and vision was and the values that we held. And so we just kept revisiting that. We also had a time when, we had to figure out, things like why are we not getting there? We had to do some team development. We looked at policy changes. We did peer surveys and other kinds of surveys that gave us information about why are we not moving forward any more than what we are if we felt like we were at a standstill. There were lots of things we ran into, and we used a lot of tools in order to get us over those humps. At this point in time, we began to decide that we really had to make a fundamental change and commit to a complete conversion. Again, that goes back to not only the philosophical change we were making within our agency, but it also went back to how are we going to spend our resources. And we made the decision to spend our resources on things that were more integrated and person-centered. And so we developed a conversion plan. It was a very, very specific conversion plan that said we will close our sheltered workshops and we will do it. And it took us 10 years to do it. And we did it one person at a time. We had a lot of resistance during this time, and all I can say is you really need to continue to talk to the people, that your key stakeholders, and you've got to continue to gather that feedback. And we did that through what I had already mentioned as fear surveys. It was what's stopping us from doing this, and we found out a lot of it was fear of where are we headed? Where's that land we're going to end on? Or land on. So that was part of what was going on during this period of time.
And I just want to stress on those fear surveys, this is something we just designed on our own. We talked about a unique journey. We surveyed the staff, we surveyed parents, we surveyed the people we serve, and I still have my own fear survey because I had to get real about what was frightening me about where we were headed, and were there things that I was holding on to, old legacies, old ideas and norms, prejudice, and fear of what it meant for me. And I had to get real about this. This meant a change for me about what my job was going to be. And we're all worried about that. And we had to address the fact that our staff were vested in what we were currently doing, and were unsure about what we were headed. We just wanted to share with you, not go into great detail, but we talked about mission refinement. And I want you to see the mission on the left actually was probably in place since about 1968. I have 1980 up there, but we were using 1980 as our reference point. I put that great big question mark behind there because I remember walking here in the doors here when I got hired, and we were all supposed to be able to tell our mission. And 1987, I'll tell my age, I was 24 years old, and they gave me this mission, and I never could get it all. But what I want you to notice is that first mission is very much, focused on the agency. It's all about the agency and what we do and the tools we use and least restrictive environment and principles of normalization. And these are the services. So we were trying to fit people into these services and these norms. And, we told you we started this evolution in the late 80s and early 90s. So in 1994, we refined that mission. And then you can see a shift, but it was still about SURS. We're going to enrich people's lives, and we specialize. It's about us. We specialize in the growth of challenged people. And so we obviously weren't happy with that. And in 1999, again, through this ongoing process, we revised our mission once again. And we, it's about partnering in our communities. And we moved a little more person-centered here. You can see the shift. We're going to enrich the quality of life. Now it wasn't about fixing the person so much. We're going to try to enrich the quality of their lives, but it was still about we're enriching their lives because we're around. We're supporting them. We're modeling. We're planning. See that? We. And then in 2007, again, we refined our mission to the next step. And you can see more of that person-centeredness coming through. We are a partner in our communities to provide services to support full inclusion and independence for the individuals with disabilities. And you know what? There's another step to this. I'm not going to tell you I'm totally pleased with that. But I wanted to share this, that in 13 years, there were 3 iterations of our mission. So while you don't want to be changing your mission every year, don't be content. Don't become complacent, because in challenging your current vision and mission, you're forcing yourself to peel back your own layers and peel back the layers in your community and within the industry.
Well, as I said a little bit earlier, there was various points in this journey where we could really have been derailed rather easily. And here was another point in that journey. We feel like at one point in time we kind of really just hit a wall. As we began to build the synergy and really decide we were on this journey and plan and put actions in place and do all this hard work, we began to get staff resistance, community resistance, parents were resisting. Of course, we didn't know for sure how we were going to do this because there were funding challenges. And then, of course, there were all the barriers that came up. If people are going to be in the community, how are they going to get to all the places that they're going to go in the community? There was no public transit system in our area at the time. Oh, and then part of the parents' fears and even clients' fears was, well, how am I going to be treated out there? What kind of attitudes are people going to have towards me? And another thing that came up was financially, how can they afford to go out there? It's going to cost money if they're going to be out there and join a club and exercise every week. That costs money. If they're going to take a class, that costs money. Another barrier we felt at this time was clients really not being in a position to make informed consent. They really weren't, and we recognized at this point in time that we really had to get our clients to a point where if they were making the decision to participate or not to participate in more community-based and inclusive kinds of things, that at least they were making an informed decision. So we baby stepped our way out there and said, okay, let me take you out there and show you some things. And after you've looked at those things, then Then you can make your decision. Do you want to participate or don't you? You know, it wasn't like we were trying to push this on everybody. We really meant it when we said person-centered. What do you want to do? And we did really take this one person at a time. What is the best thing for this person? So we ran into a whole lot of barriers at this point in time. And it was at this point in time that we had to stay committed to our vision and to our mission. And we had to stay person-centered, and we had to start asking ourselves some really, really hard questions. And we did that. And I think that change management team helped to keep us focused. Those outside resources helped to keep us focused, helped to give us a push when we needed it. But we began to ask some really, really hard questions about, again, back to the strategic planning, what's stopping us? And one of the things was just this great fear of, we don't know where we're headed. We don't know where we're landing. And it was very, very difficult to explain to people where we were going to land because we were doing it in a person-centered way. It's like, I can't tell you, I'm not putting together a canned program that everybody will participate in. I'm trying to put together person-centered plans that include people in the community. And that's a little hard because I have to know what your person or you want. And so we had to face that, and we had to discuss that so many times, and had a lot of resistance around that. And as far as staff resistance, there were people who just couldn't get on board with us, and we had to recognize that.
And before we go to the next slide and go to the close, I also want to say this, really recognizing barriers and addressing them is pivotal. And one of the things that you see, that first bullet, is transportation. And this was something that was near and dear to me. 20 years ago, we kept talking about people aren't getting jobs because they can't get there. It's the transportation. It's the transportation. And we kept saying, well, the community ought to do something. The community ought to do something. The community ought to do something. Well, guess what? The community wasn't doing anything. So we decided to make it part of our strategic plan. And we got very real about it, and this was our method. We decided that we had to take a lead role, not necessarily be the provider, but we had to take a lead role in bringing transportation into our communities. And we found out about some federal funds for rural public transit, and we found out one of our sister organizations, Four Rivers, did a really unique model with rural public transit. We found out that we could match that, provide some of the federal match if we were a provider of transportation of Medicaid, and we went down a path to make it happen. And in 2008, we started to bring rural public transit to our communities, and now have opened more doors, not all doors, but more doors for people with disabilities. So we're coming to the close here, and what I just want to stress is that I hope that you've picked up that this is just a constant process. It's not a one and done. And that you really move back and forth. You may do strategic planning, and then you're moving along. You're like, hey, this isn't working so good, and you're going to go all the way back. And you may even look at your vision and challenge your vision and challenge your mission. And then we start over again, and we may have to refine our action steps, or there may be refinement of the mission. So this isn't linear. There is no direct route as to how this all plays out. Our journey has been one of 20 years. We started back in 1995 making this happen. And I'm very pleased with where we're at, but I'm not happy that we're where we want to be. We're evaluating now. We're looking at our employment and how can we be better at what we do, and how can we be more holistic, and how can employment really be first in all that we do. And we're challenging where we're directing our resources and the time and energy. And I've had to be real recently about, I don't think I've given enough time and resource to our employment services. We need to find a way to make this happen. So the challenge is to continue to weigh all decisions against that vision and value, and to continue to rip off the Band-Aid, and ouch, it hurts. And sometimes it hurts personally when you realize that you may now be stuck in your mind as to how things should be, and you're not open to new ways of doing things. So you have to find ways to keep the passion. You've got to find new internal champions. We're trying to bring them on board, tell the story. That's why we're doing this today. We want to continue to do it. We can't lose the history of where we've come from, and we need to recognize how far we need to go. So within your own organizations, make sure that you continue to have a process. Annually, our management team and our board evaluate our vision and our mission and our ends. Whether we change them or not, it is on a fixed calendar that you must do this every year. And that may sound so simple, but if you don't place it on a calendar, it doesn't get done. So we make sure that we talk about this every year, that we have this open debate and look at where we're at as an organization.
I think really we're about wrapping up here. I just, as a close, I want to say it was a wonderful journey, and we're still on it. And I am so happy to have been a part of it because I think I'm a better person for it. I think
Thanks so much, Patty and Kelly. Guys, if you can enter in your questions on the chat box on the top right-hand side of the screen, I will read them out loud in the order that we receive them so that they can be captured by closed captioning. So Angie doesn't have a question, but she says, Kelly and Patty, great presentation. I'm happy to promote SIR's vision every day.
Thank you, Angie. And we're glad to have you as a partner doing that with us, Angie.
Okay, well, I don't see anyone typing in any questions. Maybe Kelly and Patty, if you all want to stick around for just a few minutes in case we have any late questions. Okay. Oh, we do. I see folks typing now. But we really want to thank Kelly and Patty for sharing their time and their expertise with us today. You guys have really helped us and given, I know, me personally, great perspective in all of this. And you've certainly been a great kickoff to our Check and Connect webinar series. So, and thank you to all our participants today for coming. We will archive this webinar on the CCLC website under past trainings, and that will take probably about a week or so to get up on the website. The slides are available for download right here through this website, and you can go through the upload file, or I'm sorry, files to download right underneath the chat box. You can click on the file name and then download it. We do have one question from Alfonso. He says, your process started from the right vision from the top. Any suggestion from attempting initial change from the bottom or mid-level?
Yes, I think change can start at any level in the organization. You can have change agents at any level. I think in order to make this an ongoing journey and one that actually is successful in moving forward, you will have to have your folks from the top and your board of directors involved. But it can start anywhere. Change agents can be, you know, anyone within the organization. And we've had, in our organization, we had several change agents at several levels.
You know, I think this is just a challenge in all industries and businesses, is that, you know, change agents at the mid-level, obviously you do have to have the top buy-in, but what you can do is build your synergy, get your information together, present it to the people at the top, show what's in it for them. All of us want to know, how do we benefit from this as an organization? How do the people we serve benefit from this? So bringing that information to them and being comfortable in presenting that, and trying to get that buy-in to the top. But you can get enough synergy from the mid-level to make it happen and float it up to the top. You want to, yeah. And that's the key. Sandy's over here, Sandy Block, it is critical that you're not going to be able to go it alone. You're going to have to pull in some other partners. I've used the approach of, I hate the word outside attack, but I guess I'll use that. If there are resources out there, and there are, with the center and with the technical assistance that we have now, using them to come in and provide information and get some of that energy for your top leaders. So it most definitely can happen. It doesn't have to start at the top. It's just critical at some point that you do have the buy-in.
Do we have any other questions today
to make it happen for the organization?
Okay, well, I think that was our last question, and we've actually hit the end time of our webinar, and I want to respect everybody's time too. So thank you again, Kelly and Patty, and thank you to participants. We hope this session was worthwhile, and we look forward to seeing you next month on November 3rd for us to talk about maximizing the employment service model and making sure that you all get paid for the work that you do. So everyone have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks so much, guys.